Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We are so excited to have you all join us and so excited to have Jason Kafoury joining us on today's webinar. The discussion for today will be winning with experts inside the $20 million malpractice verdict. We will quickly review an agenda for today's call. We will have a welcome and introduction, a case overview with Jason Kafoury about what happened to Jake Gleason, how Jason Kafoury went about building the case and Expert Institute's role, the results and trial outcome, and then a live Q&A session with Jason. The way that this came about, Jason has been a partner of ours for several years now, but we heard word of this amazing verdict that he was able to lock in. And we had our team go out to his office in Portland and meet with him and his father, where he shared this amazing story. And we were able to make a great video about it, but we needed to have him live on a webinar to share this story with you because it is just so amazing. So he agreed, and we have it on today, and we are so looking forward to Jason joining us. So Jason, please take it away.
Thanks, Steph, and thanks to the Expert Institute. This is really an amazing story, everyone. I think you'll love it. So, a little about myself. My dad's been a lawyer for 50 plus years. I joined a family firm in 2009. We're one of the lead trial lawyers firms here in Portland, Oregon. I've had 85 jury trials, which I think is more than anybody in my generation, at least in Oregon. And we specialize in sort of going after bad guys, good stories. And we partnered in the last couple of years with the Expert Institute. And as you'll see, they were essential in helping us win this big medical malpractice verdict. Let's talk about Jake. So talk about having a dream client, right? He's straight out of Central Casting. He's like 6'4", good looking guys from New Zealand. He grew when he was age 13, he grew a foot and became passionate about soccer. He, at age 16, was on the New Zealand Olympic team. He was recruited actually by Manchester United, went to a summer camp there. And at age 19, he was drafted by the Portland Timbers. He spent 7 years as a goalkeeper with the Portland Timbers. He became the primary starter in 2016. This is pretty typical of goalkeepers. They tend to kind of mature more like mid-20s to late 20s. And then they can play all the way into their late 30s, even 40 years old, which was one of the big parts of our wage loss claim. So 2016, he becomes the primary starter as the goalkeeper. He actually had the highest save percentage in the league late in that year. He was primary starter in 17. In 2018, new goalkeeping coach, he developed shin pain in the summer of 2018 bilaterally, both sides. And at first they thought it might just be shin splints. And over several weeks, they finally decided to get x-rays. The team doctor did not work for the Timbers, so otherwise would have been barred by workers' comp from being a claim against him for medical malpractice. He had his own medical clinic that he ran with several doctors. They also ran a surgery center, the same group of doctors. And then we'll get into what happened with the case and the malpractice here in a second. So the important part of the timeline is the trade deadline was August 8th. To move players. The Timbers were on a roll heading towards the playoffs. They actually ended up playing in 2018 for the MLS championship. They played in the championship game that year. So the trade deadline passes on August 8th. August 9th, they finally get x-rays of his shins, and it shows that he's got bilateral stress fractures. The general manager, the owner of the team are totally ticked off. We found this out through text messages. And so the doctor is feeling pressure, the team doctor, Dr. Edelson, to make this surgery go as quickly as possible to try to get him back to playing. So they schedule the surgery for August 15th. Can we put up the slide of the surgery room? So they schedule him for August 15th. Client goes in for the surgery. Everything seems normal. He's put under anesthesia. While under anesthesia, totally unbeknownst to my client, they open up the equipment for the surgery. And the surgeon had specifically asked the medical device rep, I need 2 plates, the same size, 6-hole plates for doing the left and the right. Well, long, complicated story over 5 days as to why that didn't happen. But the bottom line for us was it didn't happen. And they only had 1 of the 2 plates. So the surgeon had a big decision. He decided, instead of, and I'll go through these slides here in a minute of his choices, but he decides to send another medical device rep, James Pemberton, off-site to go pick up another plate from another facility, all while my client was under anesthesia. And this led to a huge chaos in the OR. People were going in and out of the OR. The doctor was going in and out of the OR. They're making phone calls. It turns out that the medical device rep, who was supposed to have the proper equipment there, is actually out on Dr. Edelson, the defendant doctor's partner's boat, drinking beer. So they get him on the phone and they realize, oh gosh, we got to go off site to find another. So this all happens over about 30 minutes. They go off site, they pick up another plate, knowing nothing about its sterilization at all. They bring it in and they put it through what's called flash sterilization, which I'll explain is a 15-minute sterilization instead of the normal 3 to 4 hour sterilization. And the doctor attempted to do the left one with the properly sterilized one while he waited to see if the right one arrives. The right one arrives. It goes into that room there, the flash sterilizer room, which is right next to the OR. They put the device in the flash sterilizer, the one from outside facility. They bring it in, they put it in the flash sterilizer, and then they bring it into the room. And our evidence was it was hot and it was wet. And that process is what led to the infection, the particles attaching to that plate when it went into the OR, and eventually it got put into his leg. So we can move forward and show what happens to the surgery timeline. So my client wakes up, and nobody tells him anything went wrong. Surgery went about an hour longer than it was supposed to. Client, over the next couple of weeks, seems like everything's going normal. He goes on with his life. He's back to training. He's actually even back to running within a couple of weeks. First surgery was August 15th, where they did the bilateral plating. The Labor Day weekend, September 1st, my client is actually with the Dr. Murphy, who was the business partner of Dr. Edelson, who had the boat with the medical device rep drinking beer. He was actually a friend of my client. So my client is out with Dr. Murphy. They're playing golf in Bend, Oregon. And my client shows Dr. Murphy, says, I got this red bump developing on my right shin. I don't know what's going on here. Murphy, who knew what really happened in the surgery because he got the phone call, Murphy says, oh no, that's bad. That looks like it's getting infected. So Murphy orders a oral antibiotic on September 1st. Client takes the oral antibiotics for a couple weeks. Still, nobody throughout all these visits over the month from the first surgery on August 15th, no one's ever told my client what really happened during the surgery. So client, September 14th, the infection gets a little bit better with the oral antibiotics, but then it comes back really bad. He goes in. Dr. Edelson, the main defendant doctor, decided to do the flashing. Another business partner of his, a Dr. Greenleaf, does a subsequent surgery on September 14th. In that surgery, Greenleaf could have removed the hardware, the infected plate, but he chose not to. And one of the key pieces of evidence in the case was Dr. Edelson never told his own business partner, Dr. Greenleaf, about what really happened with the flash sterilization on that before that September 14th surgery. And we got their texts and their emails about it. And so horrible outcome results from this. My client, the same right side gets reinfected. They have to remove that hardware on the 26th. And then the left side gets infected. So now he's got both sides infections. This time on the left side, they remove the hardware right away. As you can see, on October 1st, they identify the left side infection. And our evidence was from our experts, and partially through the expertise of the Expert Institute helped me get there, as you'll hear. Our theory was that the infection spread via the bloodstream from the right through and collected on the hardware on the left over those couple weeks. So total nightmare situation unfolds. My client ends up having, as you can see here, 14 subsequent surgeries, 14 surgeries. He has he developed permanent pain every day with every step he takes on both sides from going through all those surgeries. Enormous psychological trauma. My client drove around with pill bottles ready to kill himself over that course of that year. He'd lost his career, and he came to me in October. Dr. Murphy, the guy on the boat who first finds out, finally tells my client 2 months later. He says, "Hey Jake, I'm your friend, man. I'm watching you go through this. I got to tell you what really happened. They flashed you, man. They flashed you. They put a dirty plate in you back on August 15th." So Jake Gleason approaches me. I was connected with his sports agent, and approaches me in October. We ordered Jake's medical records. There's nothing about the flashing in the medical records. There's nothing in any of his pre-litigation documents about the flashing. I actually hired 4 orthopedic doctors to look at the medicals and look at everything, and all of them said, "Hey, no case here, no case to be made." I knew that flashing had happened because I'd had the secret leak, but I couldn't prove it until we started the litigation. So I filed the lawsuit. We're ready for the litigation slide. Filed the lawsuit in July of 2020, almost 2 years after the surgery. I wanted to blow this up nationally because I had a professional soccer player, and I thought it would, sort of raise the stakes on the defendants and scare them maybe into settlement. So I got ESPN to do a big national story when we filed the lawsuit. And we ended up getting a key text message from Dr. Edelson to the general manager of the Timbers, a Gavin Wilkinson, right after the lawsuit was filed. We got this weeks before the trial, 7 years later, that showed the general manager telling the doctor, "Hey, the team and the management have your back 100%. And we sprung that text message on Gavin Wilkinson, the general manager. He wasn't ready for it in the middle of the trial because he walked into trial and pretended to be, "Oh, I'm just a neutral here. I haven't picked a side." And we said, "Oh, you haven't picked a side, have you? Maybe this text message right after the lawsuit was filed might change your mind about which side you're on in this case." So that was a fun little trial war story, but let's keep going. So we had 2 claims in the case. As you can see, we originally asked when we filed it for 10 million. As the damages developed, we ended up bumping it up to 25 million about 2 months before the trial at the end of 2024. So we were suing Dr. Edelson, the surgeon, his business partner Greenleaf for not removing the plate on that second surgery and just doing a washout. Then we sued the surgery center that both of them owned, and we sued the medical clinic that both of them owned. So there's 4 initial defendants. And the first claim was, you shouldn't have flashed. You should have, done a lot of things we'll get into with our experts that you should have done to avoid flashing and go through the normal sterilization. That was claim number 1. Claim number 2, and I'll show you the flash sterilization. Can we go to that next? So working with the Expert Institute, we talked to so many experts about sterilization. This is a very strange world, I will say. I've been in this world for 7 years now, since I was first hired in 2018. But the dirty secret of orthopedics is that I think that much more flash sterilization happens. Even though the CDC says don't flash implantable devices, all the major medical organizations say don't flash implantable devices. The device reps say don't flash implantable devices. And all major, health governmental organizations all say don't do it. I think that it happens more than we know of. Flash is designed to, if you drop an instrument in the middle of it, so if you drop a scalpel, you put it in the flash sterilizer, you bring it back, you keep the surgery going. But it is significantly higher risk for infection because of all the things that can go wrong over that 15 minutes. The defense in the case was flash is just as good. 4 minutes once you get it up to 270 degrees. It's the same sterilization process. Nothing to see here, folks, was the defense. It got to 4 minutes. That plate was sterilized. Something else must have caused the infection. And they really didn't have a lot to talk about on the standard of care because it was so obvious that you shouldn't flash implantable devices. So their real defense was causation, as always is with medical malpractice. They said, well, how do we know he didn't develop the infection after the surgery? How do we know it wasn't the ice machine that he was on? Or maybe it was a bug bite, because there were some medical records said the red bump initially looked like a bug bite. But when we showed the power of this slide here, look at all the steps. You're supposed to 60 minutes inspect and brush everything. Put it in an hour-long machine wash. Then you inspect it, sterile wrap it. Then you put it in the autoclave, which is the 4 minute at 270. And then the key to the case, the dry time. Flash doesn't allow any time for drying. So that's where you bring the hot, wet instrument from that next door room into the sterile OR. So you're taking it from a hot room to a cold room. And as I'll show you, we developed, that next slide, please, on the causation. We showed, hey, microcontaminants that are floating through the air are much more likely to wick to a wet surface. And I think these slides were so great for the jury because this is complicated stuff. How do you explain wicking, right? We went with a local entity called Fat Pencil here in Oregon that does our slides. They did all these nice visuals for us. But I think this really helped show the jury, oh, wow, now I get it. Why bring a hot, wet instrument made that more likely the source and the causal link of what led to the staph infection. The bug that got on him was called staph caprae, C-A-P-R-A-E. That's what was identified on the right side. And the evidence was that staph caprae is a slow-moving, slow-developing staph. There are other staph bugs out there that are much faster, Staph aureus, for example, which the symptoms would have set in with days. But part of our causation was if it was staph caprae, the timing of when that bug started several weeks later, how it developed over the weeks, it all fit with it coming in on an implant during the surgery versus a bug bite or versus some surface infection. So that was really the causation fight in the case. Was this introduced during surgery by the plate that went into him, or was this a surface level infection that developed afterward that went down to the plate? That was really the big medical causation fight. The second, and then sort of the smoking gun on flashing, as I told you, when we first filed the lawsuit, we had no proof that they flashed. Can we go to the next slide? And then the fun of lawsuits, the smoking gun document. We got this after we filed and we did discovery. This was what the surgery center made the doctor sign if he was going to flash an implantable device and put it in somebody before he knew that the bioindicator had come back negative. They said, so even though he was an owner of it, they said, we're covering our own butts here. Doctor, you got to sign off that you're the one making this decision. So this is that aha moment when the discovery comes in and you start looking through it and you say, aha, we can finally prove that we knew it was flashed, but then we got this document. Requested tray was not stocked appropriately and a borrowed tray was brought in to supplement. Doctor signed off 4:45 right in the middle of the surgery. So this proved that it was flashed, which was fantastic. The second claim we made was that not only was it below the standard of care to flash the implantable device, but secondly, they never told the patient. And this was the most powerful part of the case. This is what really, I think, lost Dr. Edelson all credibility with the jurors, is that he had no explanation as to why the patient didn't have a right to know what happened during that surgery. And then, as I'll explain with our experts, we were able to show if the patient would have been told day one that there was flash done and known that the implant might have been dirty, they could have had a different outcome. They would have had a much better outcome. They wouldn't have done oral antibiotics to start. They would have started with IV antibiotics immediately. They would have pulled that hardware immediately instead of leaving it in there for weeks. And so this was the second big part of the case, was not only did they fall below standard of care using the flash, but then failing to disclose. And that was a causal link with further damage to the client. So, this was one of my favorite clips. I took this clip of the doctor in his deposition. Can we play it for him real quick?
After this procedure, when is the next time you spoke to my client?
I saw him the next day.
At that point, did you tell him, hey, there was something that happened during this procedure where the equipment was missing and we had to flash it before we put into you? Did any of that come out of your mouth talking to him?
No.
Why not?
There was nothing about that I felt was relevant to what was performed and his course.
What about when, on the right side, weeks later, it was documented that there was an infection in his right side? Did you take that opportunity to tell my client about the fact that you had done this auto flash procedure during his surgery?
No, I didn't.
And why, after an infection develops, do you not tell the patient about what actually happened during the surgery?
Well, there was nothing that happened during the surgery in my mind that specifically caused an infection.
But don't you think at that point he had a right to know that there were things that happened during that surgery that had never happened to you in 15 years at the surgery center? Don't you think after an infection develops in a professional athlete in our town, he had a right to know that?
Yeah, I really did not have an opinion about that at the time.
So a couple key things about this. So I focus grouped those clips. Oh, is that the end of it? Oh yeah. So I focus grouped those clips. People hated the doctor at that point. You saw the little smirk he gave looking over at his lawyer. And so I played those clips in our case in chief. I played them in opening, and I already knew from the focus group that people were very angry at the doctor for not disclosing. The power of the case was actually the failure to disclose. You know, the flashing, we could argue orthopedics all day long, but the failure to disclose is what drove, I think, the big verdict in this case and the anger of the jury. After the doctor testified, here in Oregon, we allow juror questions. There were 40 questions to this doctor, 40 by the jurors, many of them not asked, but questions that were just incredulous, like, doctor, if your own son was being put through this procedure, would you be okay with him going with flash sterilization and not the normal sterilization? I mean, just questions like that we're just like, wow, okay, we're winning this trial. So let's jump into the expert side of things. And can we slide the next roll here and how the Experts Institute really helped me in this trial? So yeah, I've been working with them for several years now, and I use them for all my big cases and small cases for finding experts. What I love about Expert Institute is how quickly they get me people, how attentive they are to my needs. If I have something that is not quite the right expert, they'll give me 2 or 3 cracks at finding the right person. You know, I just keep, it's almost like ChatGPT, right? Just keep burrowing harder, keep looking better, try to find the exact person I need. I'll show you also as we go through this, how we used Expert Radar to get a killer moment on cross-exam for one of the defense experts. Can we go to the next slide? So, I knew I needed a high-powered orthopedic surgeon to go against a professional, a medical doctor who worked with professional athletes. I knew the defense was going to have unbelievable experts that worked on professional athletes. So I actually went to Expert Institute. They connected me with a trauma surgeon down in LA. And that surgeon told me, you know what? I'm not quite the right guy here, but my colleague would be perfect for you. And that's how I met Dr. Joseph Liu. Dr. Joseph Liu, current for the LA Kings, orthopedic surgeon, current USC football and USC athletics orthopedic surgeon, former assistant orthopedic surgeon for the Chicago Bulls. So when I met Dr. Liu, he's like this, just small, incredibly brilliant guy. He walked into my office. I never met him, live until right before the trial. And he walked into my office at 10 o'clock at night. I handed him the opening statement from the defense where they'd kind of outlined some of their key points. He literally read my opening statement in about 2 minutes, or the defense opening statement. I went through 50 pages, just dish, 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 dish. And then he's like, okay, I'm ready to talk. What do you want to talk about? And I was like, Jesus Christ, you just got off the plane, doctor. It's 10 o'clock and you're a superior human being. Anyway, I knew I needed somebody who worked, professional athletes, done this procedure and would be an expert on the standard of care as it came to professional athletes. And the Expert Institute helped me find him, and he was fantastic. One of the best experts I've ever worked with. So go to the next one. He helped me design this slide. And this was such a powerful slide to show that the doctor had options. We always talk about for a jury, what's the easy way to explain the case? So number one, account for both plates, right? Number two, wake the patient up if you don't have both plates, say, hey, full reschedule. Easy for the jury to understand. Other option, do the left leg only. You got one sterilized plate, properly sterilized, do the left leg. And the other one, just use a different plate set. And this is one I don't think they saw coming until we got into the trial. I'll explain how expert stuff works here in a second in Oregon. But can we go to the next slide? So I had the fat pencil folks do exact diagrams. They came and took photos of the actual hardware that was put in him to do his actual shins as a lifelong, as an actual sized diagram. And then can we go to the next one? And Dr. Liu pointed out, he said, look, the guy had another hole plate 7 sitting there. He could have just used a 7-hole plate. He didn't have to go off-site, go get this other 6-hole plate. And when I asked the doctor, why would he do that? The internal reason orthopedic doctors do it is, quote, style points. They don't want to have a 6 and a 7 for future x-rays in there. They want to have 2 simultaneous 6s. That's what I think really happened here. But this slide was so powerful, just to show, look at how the difference in size, 7 versus 6, could have easily done it. So, all right, we're probably ready for the next one. All right. And I will let the expert, this was the killer moment. So the Expert Institute has this radar. I don't know if you guys have ever used it, but it's super effective and fast and easy. And what they do is they go, I don't know what they do through their processes to go digging, but they go digging through every expert's testimony they've ever given and all the other depositions that they've given, any dirt out there on the person. They give you a mountain of information, and I'm gonna have Steph show you how it works here. But can we go to our experts real quick, and I'll explain how I use the radar in this trial. So these are our experts on the left. And I wanted to make sure, for example, Dr. Wiviet, Dr. Liu, all of the folks I was using, I wanted to make sure that they didn't have any crazy dirt, because I've heard some horror stories of your own expert. You don't know what's there. They get called to the stand. Maybe they're not credentialed. Maybe they lost their privileges somewhere. You never know. So I actually used radar on several of my own experts. But what's even more powerful, and how the Expert Institute was so effective in this case for me, is in Oregon, we have no expert discovery. We call it trial by ambush out here. We have no interrogatories and no expert discovery. So I don't know who the defense experts are until we walk into court, trial day 1, and they start reading the witness list to the jury. And we all frantically start writing down the experts. So I literally was in trial. I have friends at the Expert Institute. I took a photo of their witness list. I texted it immediately from the courtroom to Expert Institute, and I said, jump on these experts. I want to radar every single one of their experts. And they normally turn around on radar is, a week, couple weeks. They got this for me within days. I had radar coming back on all of the defense experts, and we'll show you a killer thing we got from that here in a second.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and share that radar profile that Jason is referring to here.
This was just to help before we jump in. One of the questions in the case was, what was the future career prospects of Jake Gleason? He was 28 when this happened. So our claims were, future past medicals of about 600, future wage loss, past wage loss about 5 million. So the question is, what would a 28-year-old goalkeeper be able to make? And did he have just a couple more years, or did he have 10 years? And so our experts said he could have played another 10 years based on his skill set. And the defense brought in Patrick McCabe to say, oh no, he was only going to make a couple $100,000 in the future. And McCabe he's a sports agent. So
thank you.
right.
And this is the profile that we delivered to Jason and his team for them to dig through and see if they are able to find anything at all that will help them with their case. Just to give you a quick overview of what radar entails, you can see that we have several headers across the top. Professional, you can think of as a very detailed CV. We have all the subsections listed on the side of your screen as well if you wanted to hop to any of them. Today, we're going to focus on litigation activity because that's where Jason found the golds that he was looking for. As you can see here, we have 20 cases involving this expert and 5 times that we are detecting a challenge. If I scroll down a bit, you'll see that we have the expert witness litigation. And when I open up each of these, we have the supporting documents to go along with each case. Here, it's letting you know that challenge language has been detected in here. So these are certainly worth looking at. As we continue to scroll down further, you can view relationships, and you are able to focus on just one specific firm if you wish, or even one specific judge. And then the final section where I know Jason really found his gold in this depo transcript. So I'm going to open it up here.
Note that's from 2005. They found something from 2005. This guy testified.
So when I open up the depo transcript, it is going to take me to a PDF version of that depo. From there, it is totally yours to view and have. You can download it, you can annotate it, you can print it. Most importantly, you can search it. And so you could take any keyword here, like salary. It's letting us know that it's mentioned 34 times, and it then highlights each place in which that keyword is mentioned. And we know that that's an important piece of the puzzle that Jason is trying to gather here. So Jason, can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you found in this depo?
Yeah, so Patrick McCabe was a sports agent, and he came in for the defense and testified. Jake Gleason was not this top flight goalie. I studied his career. He probably was going to make a few $100,000 more. Now, what had happened is in 2018, goalkeepers didn't make that much money. It was like my client's salary was like $130,000, $140,000. But fast forward 7 years, now the average goalkeeper makes $500,000-$600,000. The amount of money in the MLS has just skyrocketed. So our experts said, no, if he had a great long career, he was super skilled, he would have done well, and he was going to make, upwards of 5 million. So McCabe testifies that my client's only going to make a couple $100,000, despite, as I said, in 2016, he had the top save percentage of any goalkeeper in the league. And so we found this depo. The defense didn't know about it because there's no expert discovery. And on cross-exam, after McCabe said our client was only going to make a couple $100,000, one of my colleague attorneys, Alex Cambiar, he looked at Mr. McCabe and he said, you've testified differently about future career prospects for another athlete, haven't you? And the guy kind of looked like, what are you talking about? And then he said, well, let's talk about the 2005 testimony you gave about an 18-year-old high school soccer player who had never played college or even professional. And isn't it a fact that you said in 2005 dollars, that guy was going to make 10 to 16 million dollars a year? And the guy he didn't know how to handle it, man, on the witness stand. We got him. And the jurors told us afterward, they were like, the moment we found that out, that guy lost all credibility in our mind. And it was a killer thing that never would have happened, but for the Expert Institute. So what everybody's waiting to hear. So 3-week trial. We were pretty confident going into closing argument. Uh, the but you're always scared. The Friday, so the closing was on a Wednesday, so about 2.5 weeks into the trial. We had taken the doctor's we'd cross-examined him on that Friday the week before, and that's where we had the 40 questions going after him. So, we were cautiously optimistic going to the closing arguments. And it was such a fun trial because we invited all of the media to cover the trial. So I had the ESPN guy who had covered it when we filed it. He was keeping tabs on things. We had the local TV channels were coming in and out of the courtroom, providing live updates. So with TV cameras in there day in and day out. The closing arguments happened Wednesday. The jury goes out and radio silence for 2 days, not one jury question. So we were asking for 20 million in pain and suffering, 5 million future past wage loss, and we were asking for about 600 in medicals. The past medicals was about 413,000, and then I think we were asking for about 200 in future medicals, something like that. So, it was Friday. Obviously, you know how it is when you're waiting for a big verdict. You're just like pacing in your office for multiple days. You can't work, you can't do anything. And we were getting nervous because we were saying to ourselves, if this spills into Monday, that means we might have a hung jury. It might be a fight. In Oregon, we need 9 votes, 9 out of 12 on all counts, and it's got to be the same 9 for each claim. I remember sitting there at lunch, sitting with my client. My client, just a wonderful guy. He lost 25 pounds during this trial. He was so anxious. He couldn't eat. I mean, when he was on the witness stand, he was on the witness stand for a whole day. He was shaking. He had basically PTSD, anxiety, depression, horrible psychological trauma from all of this. One of his treating psychologist who works with a lot of professional athletes, he said, I'd never seen a worse combo of somebody who had crippling psychological trauma, such bad physical pain also, just this every step my client took, he couldn't run, he couldn't really jump anymore. My client was the kind of guy, before all this happened, he could jump and put his elbow through a basket. Like he could put his elbow like through a basket like that when he was dunking a basketball. So he had enormous vertical, and he was just a shell of himself. He lost 25 pounds in the middle of this trial, and for him, we had to win. We had to win this. So I get the call. It's about 1:45 on Friday. Verdict. So we walk over. I'm walking over with my dad. We said, all right, what's your prediction on the outcome? And my dad said 15 million. I said 10 to 12 million. That was my prediction. Walk into the courtroom. The TV, actually, the local TV, Fox, actually did a really cool thing where they went live. They broke away from whatever coverage they were doing daytime. They went live to the courtroom with like a countdown ticker, like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. And they went live right as the judge started reading the verdict. It was pretty amazing. So, and the jury came back with, it was all 12, gave us all the past medicals. They actually awarded more future medicals than we asked for. I don't know how that happened. That the judge reduced that afterward down to what we'd actually asked for. they gave us 2 million for the past wage loss, which was 2018 to 2015. And they must have spent most of their time afterward fighting over the future impaired earning capacity. Because we talked to a couple of jurors afterward, and they were like, we were all pretty confident on negligence and causation quickly, but we actually fought about what took the most was trying to figure out what his future wage loss was going to look like, which I get it. That is a hard concept to say, what would somebody at 34 years old now, how many more years was he going to play? But they reached, we had asked for 3 million in futures. They got to 2.145. And as you can see, they got to 15 million, 675. I remember being in the courtroom, and you guys, I'm sure have all whoever's won big verdicts, but there's this moment as the jurors start reading it and the numbers start coming in where the world kind of just like slows down and things just start like becoming very slow and almost spinning around you. And I remember I just put my arm around my client. He was crying, and once they said 15 million, I didn't even write down the 675. I didn't even know we won it for like an hour afterward that we'd won 675. I just dropped my pen and, put my arm around my client, gave him a hug, and judge went and talked to the jurors. And the defendants filed. They bounced immediately. They walked out, shook hands shortly afterward, but then they left. And they filed a motion for a new trial. That was recently denied a couple months ago, and now it's on appeal. Doesn't look like they want to offer settlement. I will tell you, since we have a couple extra minutes on the settlement side of things, I'm sure everybody's curious about how that went down. So we ended up, as you can, we settled with two of the parties right before the trial. So the surgery center, they had only $1 million in coverage. It's a whole long story, but I'd probably rather get to the Q&A on this, and I'm sure you guys would too. But right before my motion to amend to bump it up to 25 million, one of the lawyers walked in for the defense and said, oh, by the way, that 1 million policy, we actually have $150 million umbrella. And it led to this whole crazy thing where it turned out that United Healthcare had created a policy for the directors of a national surgery center, which were part owners of the surgery center. And they created their own fake Cayman Islands corporation. And I'm trying to send letters to the Cayman Islands so that I could say that there's coverage under the $150 million of policy. And they told me right beforehand they were never going to pay anything. So we ended up resolving with the surgery center. And we ended up resolving with the business partner, Dr. Greenleaf, right before trial. The sports medicine clinic that the doctors worked for, I could only get negligence against them if someone at their clinic was negligent besides the two doctors. I didn't really have that evidence, so I ended up dropping them. So Edelson, interestingly, never had to make a decision early on in the trial. Were they going to blame the other defendants that we'd settled with? And they decided not to. So the jurors never learned that we'd settled with any of the other parties, or that there even were other parties initially in the lawsuit. So it was just us against Edelson. Edelson only had 2 million in coverage. He had the doctor's company, which I don't know if folks have gone against, but man, are they arrogant guys when it comes to settlement. I sent them, this was the really hard call 3 weeks before the trial. Are we going to demand the 2 million standalone policy limits? And I sat down with my client. He was flying home to New Zealand. I said, Jake, it's the hardest call here. Do you demand the 2 million? Because they're probably going to give it to you, and we never get the trial. He really wanted his day in court. He really wanted to go after Dr. Edelson and have this trial. And I sent the policy limits demand, and my client jumped on the airplane, and I called him back shortly within 48 hours, and I said, Jake, good news. They told us to pound sand on our policy limits demand. They only offered 800,000, so we had it documented. So I think we've got a good bad faith claim that against the doctor's company here in Oregon for the full 20 million if we win on appeal. So the doctors negotiated themselves a special interest rate, by the way, at the legislature 20 years ago. I learned through this trial, Normally here in Oregon, you make 9% post-judgment interest, except for doctors. They only have to pay 5% judgment interest. So we think the judge made good rulings, but it'll probably be 3 or 4 years at least on appeal. So that's the state of play. That's the case, and I'm happy to take folks' questions.
Thank you so much, Jason. That was amazing. What an incredible story.
An incredible story.
So we do have our first question here from Steven. And he was wondering what prep went into the floor plan recreation for the surgery room, and was it admissible? Did you get the actual dimensions? Was it used as demonstrative?
Really good questions. I had to fight tooth and nail with the surgery center on a motion to compel to get actual photos and actual videos of the room where this happened. They kept saying, oh, why this would be such a burden on us. And I'm like, you're not a hospital. You don't have 24-hour people in there. You're a surgery center. You can make your own hours. We could come at midnight and go take photos in there. But finally got the judge to order. The judge ordered them. They could either let us go take photos, or they had to take photos and videos and give us actual dimensions. So we got a diagram with actual dimensions. I used that as a demonstrative. The judge wouldn't let that actual diagram that I made into evidence, but the real point of it was to show the flash sterilizer is next door. It had to come through there, and they gave us a video which showed taking it out of the flash sterilizer and how they'd have to push the door open into the OR and then push the flash plate into there. And anyways, that's how that all came about.
We have a follow-up from Steven saying, nice. Does that mean it was originally a notice of site inspection?
Yes, I did a notice of site inspection, exactly, to go in and look at the place. And they said no, had to do a motion to compel, and then had to get the judge to order them to give me the video.
Great. So we are welcome to take some more questions here. Oh, another follow-up from Steven. Is there anything you focused grouped that made you decide not to present something in particular?
Good question. So we do our focus groups in-house, meaning I don't spend $20,000, $30,000 on these super high expensive consultant people to do it. I find I've probably done 30 or 40 focus groups. I find that the actual focus group outcomes are about 80 to 85% accurate with real life juries. I just think you get 12 people together, you give them the same depot clips, you give them the same facts, and they tend to come to the right results. But on this one, I just focus grouped my opening statement. I didn't do the defendant's side because I didn't know what the defense, I didn't really know because we don't have expert discovery, so I didn't really know what their smoking gun theories on the medical causation or the standard of care were going to be. So I did my focus group about 2 weeks beforehand. I don't remember taking anything out. I definitely changed the order of some things in the opening and made some things more clear based on the feedback. But the main thing I took away is that the jurors just really didn't like Dr. Edelson. And after I showed them all of his video clips, they thought he was, all the stereotypes of a doctor, arrogant. I will say one thing that was just in the middle of the trial. I knew that it was like a drop the mic moment. I said to the doctor, so all the national medical organizations say you don't flash implants. The CDC, the manufacturer. I said, but not only that, doctor, your own clinic, your own surgery center has a rule which says you don't flash implantable devices. And the doctor literally said this on the witness stand. He said, well, those policies and procedures, those are just really designed for our staff. Those don't really apply to the surgeons. And I was walking away from him as he said it. And I was just like, oh, well, you just lost the case. And the jurors afterward, I had several people on the jury that were medically sophisticated. And they were like, we all know doctors don't follow the rules, but you don't admit it on the witness stand. It was great. What other questions do people have?
Great. We have a question here from Lawrence. Regarding source, did you ever identify where the escapre came from? If not, can you discuss the guts needed to refuse settlement and go to trial without knowing the source of the infection? How important is it to know the source of the HAI infection?
Yeah, this was the scariest part about this whole case. I figured since the defense wouldn't offer me any money, that they must have some incredible theory and some super high powered experts on sterilization and causation. And my working theory was through my infectious disease expert and our orthopedic experts was that based on the timing of the staph bug, like when it first developed the symptoms, that linked with the timing of when a staph capre would show symptoms. Based on how it responded to the oral antibiotics and then how it just kept not going away over the course of IV antibiotics and the washout instead of the removal of the hardware. My theory was it had that bug had to have come in on the plate. Now the hard part about it was, and the defense kept saying, but you can't prove that that bug was on that plate. And I said, Pasha, I don't need to prove at the exact moment that it came. I just need to show, more likely than not, that because you flashed it and it went through all these high risk points before it was put into my client, that at some point along there, that bug got onto there. And the chaos in the OR and coming in and out. I just had to show, and this is my argument, was jurors, I'm never going to be able to tell you the exact moment that that bug got on. You know, was it in here? Was it before it got put in the water if sterile? But was it right when it went into his leg? But at some point, more likely than not, it was because it was flashed and didn't go through the proper sterilization. The killer fact that I used, though, that Dr. Liu, the ortho, gave me was look at the outcome on the two different legs. On the left leg, when you look at those, 12 of the surgeries were on the right side where it was flashed. On the left side, the moment they identified the bug, they got the hardware out the next day and he never had any problems on the left side again. And that was that visual of just look at the right that was flashed, 12 surgeries versus 2 on the left. I think that was really powerful for the jury too.
Great. And we have one more follow-up question from Stephen. He wanted to know if your own son, did you object to that? What was the result?
That was never asked. No, that was never asked. But we knew it. It was such a fun moment because Edelson's direct ended at lunch. The jurors all wrote their questions, feverishly. The judge said, well, we don't have time. Well, we have 40 questions. Lawyers, we don't have time. I'm going to make you photocopies of all the questions. You go back, decide what you object to. Of the 40 questions, probably only like 8 of them they asked him on the witness stand, but we knew what they were thinking because we all had the questions.
Does anyone else have any other questions that they want to type in here? You can chat them over. You can add them to the Q&A. We have enough time here for 1 or 2 more questions. All right, one more from Stephen. How did you describe generals to the jury?
Yeah, pain and suffering. I there's a debate in my law firm. We have about 6, 7 lawyers, about 12 staff. I would call us a medium-sized plaintiff's firm for the state of Oregon, medium to large for the state of Oregon. My dad's one of these sort of true believers. He doesn't like using numbers in the case or the closing. So the judge reads the number asking for 20 million, but he thinks anytime you as the lawyer are asking for the actual number, that it kind of seems like you're asking for money yourself from them. That's his, 50 years of theory about being a plaintiff's lawyer. I know a lot of people have different theories and, anchor numbers and all that kind of stuff. On this, I never really, in closing, I never really came up with, here's why you should award, 20 million in pain and suffering. I just kind of painted sort of a visual drama in front of the jury of what his life was like, and what that first year was like, and afterward. And I got really low with my voice, and at the end, I always do this in closings on big cases. I say, now, all of us, the next day or two, there'll be a verdict read. We're all going to walk out of this courthouse and we're all going to go on with our lives. But there's one person in this courtroom who's going to live with your decision for the rest of his life, and that's Jake Gleason. And I hope that he looks back and says that our community gave him the fairness, the justice, generosity that he deserves. Something like that. I come out, but I hit like that because I think it's very powerful to point out what 40, 50 years of his life looks like and how this is just a moment for them, but he's going to live with it. And I think I find that to be a very effective way to end the closing on, the future.
We have two more great questions here I want to make sure we get to. The first is, was the authorization signed by the surgeon for flashing part of the medical records, or did you need to separately request those documents?
Really good question. Not in the medicals, hidden, shockingly. No, we only got that because the surgery center itself has a folder where they keep that document. And the head of the sterilization department, who'd been there for 5 or 6 years, he testified at his deposition that he'd only had a doctor sign that 2 or 3 times over his whole career. And at deposition, I got Dr. Edelson to admit that he had never flashed an implantable device in I did the math, but 400 to 500 surgeries a year over 20 years, 8,000 surgeries. So I got him in his depo to admit he'd never flashed an implantable device and had this set of facts happen before. And I think he's lying. I bet he's flashed implantable devices, but at his depo, he said he hadn't. And so I just got to parade that around for 2.5 weeks. Whenever they said, oh, they bring in they had New York Giants football team ortho doctor come in. Oh no, flash implantable devices, it happens in our field. But then I got to throw it back on this doctor and say, okay, does it happen? Because our doctor here said 8,000 surgeries, it's never happened. So that was winning the case at deposition, which I think, after I walked out of that deposition of the doctor, and I was like, I think we got him. After that, and I think we did.
All right, and our final question for today, is there anything that you would have done differently? Experts you maybe would have eliminated, or experts that you wish you had gotten that ended up bowing out, and why?
Anything I would have done differently. I think I wish I would have gotten the Expert Institute involved on more experts earlier. I ended up getting a lot. I got like Dr. Liu and some of my most powerful witnesses. I got them kind of late in the game, within the last year and a half. I mean, I had several experts, 5 years early, but I wish I would have gotten some of the more high-powered experts earlier in the case. And I think I would have felt more confident throughout the litigation. And I wish I would have focus grouped it earlier, because I think I would have had a lot less stress for all those months leading up to the trial. So I did the focus group 2 weeks before the trial. So instead of, months before the trial. So, but that's the nature of our litigation life, right? We always wish we had more time to work on our cases. So.
Great. Jason, thank you again so much for taking the time to share this incredible story. Yeah, it was fantastic to have you on today. And thank you
And
everyone
thanks
for
to the
joining.
Expert Institute for all they do. And feel free, anybody offline, feel free to email my Kafoury McDougal's our website. Feel free to find me. And if you have any other questions, I'm happy to help answer them. So, and always happy to work on Oregon cases if anybody has one. So.
Fantastic. Thank you everyone for joining today. Have a good rest of your day.